everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today we are going to continue on with the Gilded Age Natural Form Bodice progress, and we'll be picking up just a little bit after where I left off in the last video. So if you have not seen the last video, which is where I assembled this whole bodice and did sleeves and did do a collar, but I will talk about that shortly, and some other things, I will link that video down below along with the videos for the skirt construction and the bodice mock-up. I think this is like video 5 at this point, and I have a feeling there's going to be at least one more video to this project since I also will need to make a hat. So let's see how much I get done this week. But first I want to talk to you about what I've done since the last video, because I did do a couple of things. So the first thing that I did, as I mentioned at the very end of the last video, was that I was going to sew on the pleats. I was going to move them slightly and sew on the pleats of the sleeve. So I have now done that. This was all sewn by hand. I did a running back stitch in the seam line of the piping and just sewed that all on by hand. So it's not the prettiest inside, but it basically just looks like a lot of large-ish stitches. I didn't do like a super careful job of making them tiny because there's no pressure put on this or anything. Like there's no tension. It's just decorative. But a running back stitch turned out to be just the easiest stitch to do when you're working in a confined space like this. So that's why I did that. Those are on both of the sleeves and I adjusted them like I mentioned I would in the last video. The other thing that I did that you might notice, I took the collar off. So I took the collar off for a couple of reasons. One, as I said in the last video, I just wasn't very happy with how it looked. It was doing a weird like wrinkle thing. It also just looked weird. And one other thing that started bothering me after I last talked to you was that the back of the collar just seemed large, like too deep. So I took the collar off. And I am going to attempt to maybe use that same collar. But before I do that, I actually want to adjust the depth of the back. So I have it kind of pinned out right here where I think the new depth is going to be. I'm going to be taking off like over an inch of that to make it much smaller in the back so that it really doesn't take up any of that cool lacing detail that I'm going to be adding with the faux lacing velvet ribbon. I don't want it to block all of that. So that's why I'm going to be making it shallower in the back. And then once I do that, I'm also going to try putting some of the ribbon on the collar. I think I showed you in the last video where I kind of mocked it up with 2 strips of the ribbon and some lace around the outside edge. And I did like how that kind of made a difference, you know, made it actually pop on the bodice. So once I make this narrower in the back, I am going to put that ribbon and that lace on and then pin or maybe baste the collar back into place and see how I feel about it. If I like it at that point, great, we'll go ahead and use this color. If I don't like it at that point, then honestly, I'm probably gonna find some other solution. I mean, the fashion plate does make it look like it is some sort of a pleated, poofy type thing, like it's 3D, not just a flat collar. So that may be an option. If I don't like how this looks with the velvet ribbon and everything, that may be an option to do it that way, and we'll see. But before I do anything with the collar, I'm actually, very first thing, I'm going to do that lacing detail in the back. So I have my ribbon. It's, again, a little bit pinker than I wanted, but I think it'll work just fine. And I'm going to figure out how to sew it onto the back. I am hoping that I can do it by machine. And I'm hoping that I can kind of just like stitch a few stitches on each of the sides and then kind of twist and go to the next one, stitch a few stitches, twist, go like that, back and forth. So it's obviously going to be a lot more difficult now that there is substance to this bodice, but let's go ahead and dive in and I will show you whatever technique it is that I decide I'm doing on this ribbon detail. So to do this ribbon, I am folding it over at the corner, pulling it to the dot on the other side that I marked previously, making sure that it's nice and flat against the silk in the center. Then I am running some stitches. And repeating that back and forth. As these get wider, I will start to pin that in place so that it doesn't have a chance to shift. Then I'm going back and I'm sewing down the overlaps on each side, where one ribbon overlaps the other. And when it's all done, it winds up looking like this. All of the faux lacing detail is now complete. It took quite a while with having to stitch both sides of each of these little points plus the initial stitch down, but I think it looks pretty nice and neat and it's giving me the effect that I want, so I'm happy with it. So now I'm working on the collar. I have already taken it in so that it's shorter in the back, and now I'm adding lace to the underneath side. But to do this, I want my lace to look flat, but of course the collar is curved. So I've run a gathering stitch along the top of the lace, and as it comes to the curve, I'm pulling it up so that it can appear flat on the outer edge, but it's actually a little bit gathered where it's getting attached. And I'm just sewing this down here, then I'm going to flip this collar over and put the velvet ribbon on the top side. Now, of course, the velvet ribbon is just going to have to make its own curve because it isn't curvy. I mean, it's flat. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it will work out. I've done the first ribbon and I'm actually quite liking the look of it with just the one ribbon and the lace. So I'm kind of tempted to not do the second, but I think I'm going to pin it on at least a little bit and like see how it looks and then decide. It's hard to tell when it's not on me and can't close on the dress form, of course. I mean, this isn't even attached, but yeah, I'm liking that a lot better now that it's got some trim. Okay, I really can't decide. I like both. So I think I'm going to take a picture and post this on Instagram and let you guys decide overnight. And then I will do whichever you guys tell me to do in the morning. But this is why you should follow me on Instagram, because I post things like this at Lady Rebecca Fashions. So help me make decisions in my choices. I'm also, of course, going to ask my patrons on Patreon, and hopefully they will tell me too. I do take a little bit more weight with their decisions than just Instagram, but yeah, I just can't decide. I like them both. The decision was nearly unanimously 2 strips of ribbon, and I wanted to show you how I take this flat ribbon and curve it. So right now you can see it's pretty bubbly over on this side right here, but frankly, like, velvet ribbon is so nice that we can just kind of sew it. And it just flattens out underneath the foot to look all nice and flat over here. The collar decoration is now finished, so I'm going to baste it back on the neckline and then try this on and make sure that I still like it before I finish the binding and put the buttons and buttonholes on. All right, bodice is on, collar is on. It's still doing that sort of like poofy thing, but I really do think that's a seam allowance thing, because it seems like every time that I kind of fold down the seam allowance here, then it looks like a normal collar and it's like not poofing weirdly. So I think that is a matter of just getting the seam allowance out of there and folding that down with like bias tape binding or whatever. And the double velvet ribbon is on. I still I'm not sure about the collar shape. I am honestly not, because I just don't know. But I do feel like once I add buttons onto it, that is going to, because what's bothering me is the overlap and the fact that it's not center, but button overlaps are never center. Like, that's not how they work. And with buttons on it, I know you probably can't see very well through my fingers, but with buttons on it, I think that that will look a lot more balanced, because then the buttons will be center and it won't be this edge that is clearly not center. So what I'm planning to do here as far as buttons go, this is like, with the collar and everything, it'd be really, really thick to do buttonholes through that. So I am going to do hooks and eyes with the top little collar section here. And the collar itself, like this underneath side, I'm just gonna stitch that down, and then that will have the bars on top of it, sewn on top. And then this bodice portion will have the collar probably tacked down, probably where the velvet ribbon is, and that will have the eyes on it, and it'll hook over. Then from here on out, I am going to do functional buttonholes with the buttons, because it's just a whole lot more hassle to do decorative buttons and sew on all of those hooks and eyes. I think the buttonholes are far easier to do than sewing on hooks and eyes, which takes forever. So yeah, I don't foresee there being a problem with the buttonholes. I mean, knock on wood, but I think that that will be fine. So I have a lot of buttonholes to do. I measured this out before as far as where I'm going to place them, but it will probably be slightly adjusted because of the collar. So I'll figure out where they'll start, and then I think I said they were going to go every like 1 3/8 inches before. So I will space them apart, mark them, do all of the buttonholes, and sew on all of the buttons. That'll be a while. And I'm also going to do this binding on the neckline. So I am going to get to doing all of that, and then next step I think probably will be the side tail back portions. Oh yeah, I guess I haven't shown you the back on. So there's the back. It is doing weird poofy things around the top of the corset, but I think that is again just like me around the top of the corset. But I think that's pretty. I mean, hopefully. The faux lacing detail, I think it worked nicely. I think the pink is a really nice pop on here for sure. And once I add like all of the fringe and the bows and everything too, I think that all of the pink is just gonna pull this up. Because right now it's looking very gray, because this fabric, this stripy fabric, I think does read a little bit more gray purple as opposed to like blue purple. So yeah, lots to do. A lot of that is handwork. So I will see you after that and those are all done. The neckline is now bound. I sewed down the inside as well, so that's great, and I think it's laying a lot better now. I mean, obviously it's not pinned shut, but I also did all 32, I think I said, buttonholes. I counted them all. It's a lot of freaking buttonholes, but I did 32 buttonholes on the machine, of course, because a one-step buttonholer is an absolute must in my opinion. And now I can go ahead and get out of the corset for one thing, but I can also mark all of the spaces for the buttons on the other side, as well as mark the hooks and eyes that will go on here and the decorative buttons. I think I'm gonna have to make a few more buttons, because I feel like I remember making 33, and if I did 32 buttonholes, and I'm estimating that I need probably 3 buttons for the fake buttons up top, then obviously that is more than 33. So we'll see. I'm gonna sew them on first and just see if I have enough, but I think I need to make a couple more buttons. So yeah, lots of hand sewing in my future. By the way, one of the things that I do when I'm doing like facings like this with buttons is that I don't actually sew down the inside of the facing, like along the facing, because on the buttonhole side, the buttonholes are going to do that for me. So that's easy. I fold and press it, and then I don't even pin it or anything. The buttonholes just get it all nicely in place. Obviously I have a lot of threads to cut though. On this side, which I have not yet fully pressed, but this side, the buttons should be doing that for me. I don't know for certain because I'm only folding in a little bit here, so it may be that I do have to sew this facing down a little bit, but a lot of times the buttons, just by sewing it through all of the layers, that will hold that facing in place. The only part that I'm wondering about will be just the edge, because I don't want the serged edge to show, which is silly because I mean, I've got serged edges in the bodice, like I could just leave them. It's not a problem, but yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go sew a whole lot of buttons, and I will see you tomorrow. Hey look, 500,000 buttons and buttonholes. Okay, actually 35, but like, oh my god, it's so many Also, this one right here, which was one of the first ones that I made, and I never remade it. It's probably one of the single layer ones, but this one, I put it through the buttonhole for the first time and the button popped off. So maybe this brand isn't any better. I actually wound up putting some E6000 in between. Like, it only started to pop off on one side. So I kind of took it off, put some E6000 in between, pressed it back together. I heard it snap back on, and now it has a glue in it. So we're gonna see how it does, but it's the very bottom one. Like, there, you know, actually I realized partway through sewing on all of these buttons that I had initially wanted to just like sew this closed and make these decorative buttons. They are all now functional, but I'm probably never going to unbutton it below like here, because these are really the only ones that I need to actually get dressed. And obviously Antoinette doesn't fit this with the buttons as is. I have a feeling I may need to move over the ones at the waist, because the waist was a little bit large when I put it on before. So either I might need to move over the buttons or I might need to increase the dart size. We'll see, but I didn't really feel like putting it on at the moment because this took me all day. So instead, what I can now look at is doing the hem here and or in conjunction the pleats on the side, because I need to do the pleats. Some of them have come undone. I need to do them before I can really do the hem, but right now this is quite long. In fact, I'm honestly wondering if I even need the bottom button, or so this may get shortened even farther. So we'll see once I pleat this up, we'll see where this comes to. But if we look at the fashion plate, the front section here, it should come down to about the top of the second row of ruffles, and then this is the fringe tassels, etc. down there. So it should be, I think it's falling a little low. Oh, actually, no, I guess it's like right below this button is exactly where it wants to come to. So I had built this in with a 2-inch hem. I was going to fold 1 inch and then 1 inch again. So that's exactly what that is. So I guess I did it right. So yeah, I'll do the hem on that. I'll probably pin and press it in place maybe, and then do the pleats. And that way I can see how everything works together. I have my hems currently pinned both on the back of the bodice and then also on the front. I've also repleated this section here, and so I decided to try to do something with the back drape section. And I realized that my piece of muslin that I'd used a couple of videos ago now for the mock-up was exactly half the width of the silk fabric that I'm using. So I was like, okay, I'll just cut it in one, because with the mock-up I had just kind of gathered like everything up here and it somehow worked. Yeah, it doesn't work. It's not giving me the shape whatsoever. I mean, this is not connected currently over here, so that might affect things a little bit, but it's like literally zero like the shape. And even if I were to take some of this out and like have it be a separate piece, have a seam down the back, this shape down here is just not the right shape. And I'm realizing that looking at the fashion plate that I think that this is literally a corner right here, not that it's a drape being pulled up. I think this is literally like side and then side. So 2 sides and then a side up here and a side down here. So it's like a square that is not connected at all down in the middle here. It's that this would be a fully separate piece, and then we see like this part and this part, and it is not this at all. So I mean, luckily this is just like 1.5 yards or maybe even 2 yards flat here, so it's not a big deal. I can cut my other pieces out of that. But yeah, this is not at all what it is. So I think I might do another mock-up with the muslin and just figure out that shape, because I think it will be connected up here, but a little narrower than this is, because this is just too wide. It should come together like that far from the bottom, so it'll be like connected there probably, and then the other fabric will waterfall over it, but it'll be connected there, and then it will just be connected for a few inches and then will part, and this will be an edge right here where the trim is and everything. So got some work to do, and I also have to check the front to see if the hem is good. This hem is great. This is just turned up with bias tape, so I'm gonna stitch that in, cut off the excess like over here, but stitch that down. But I do have to check the front hems as well. I got this harebrained idea in my head that maybe it's actually a triangle, like that this side is all one and it just bends right here, and then this is one edge and then this is one edge, and this would be like the right angle of a right angle triangle. And so I decided to try that, and it's very not a triangle, like not even remotely. So unfortunately I cut my muslin now into a very weird shape. It's not a triangle. I think I'm gonna go with like trapezoid next, like smaller top, or rather bottom here, I guess an upside down trapezoid. So smaller side and then like slightly shorter side, then like long side, and then another side. It's a really weird shape. I don't know what that is, but I guess it's a quadrilateral. God, it's been a long time since I studied shape names. But yeah, four-sided shape with all sides different. So I think I will try that next. I think that this drape shape is a lot closer to this, but it's not quite wide enough like over here. Like this portion right here needs to be wide enough. This is the other half of the muslin, so like I didn't have a lot to work with because I had cut that triangle piece out of it. So yeah, I think it just needs to be probably a little wider up here too, because I don't think I'm quite getting to the center back right there. So like wider that way. I feel like this part is a pretty good length. It's just that the angle needs to wind up being more like that, which is why this needs to be wider, I think. Wider, and also, yeah, maybe just wider. But like it's pretty close. And then I also realized that to get the drape of these lines, I have to shape this side more. It's not a straight edge, so I'm not sure what that will look like when it's unpleated. And I also kind of feel like I want more length in that, so I've definitely got to do another mock-up, but we're getting closer with whatever shape this is. I'm starting to second guess myself and think that what looks like a square angle is not a square angle, and it's just a weird artist rendering, and it's really just like the flat edge that is looped, because this is not right. Again, it is not right. And the obvious thing here is that this needs to go out like that, and it's not a straight edge, but then like the rest of it's not right either. So I don't know. I'm calling it for the night because this is not right. Okay, I didn't call it a night. I instead decided to put the silk piece that I had before back on, but this time I did pin out some of the center portion, like some of the body of the silk in the middle, and I pinned it out with like a large wedge about this much, doubled at the top out to nothing at the bottom. I need to take actually even more out because it's still just too much drape both at top and at bottom, I'm pretty sure. But then I pinned the one layer, there will be two layers, one layer of the tassel trim on, and look at that, it's giving me that right angle. So yeah, I think I'm on the right track here. Sorry about my squeaky chair. Hi, Dora. And I will just take more out of the center, and then I'll run with this instead of messing with these weird shapes. Did I wake you up? Did I wake you up? Oh, Lion, did I wake you up too? No, Lion's been with me the entire time. Lion, don't step on the dress. Don't step on the dress. It's a nice dress. Okay, bye guys. So I've been working at trying to figure out the hem length for this front section here so that I can sew it. And I realized that the best way to do that was probably to put the trim all the way along the whole half of the front just to see, and then I'll copy the same thing on the other half. And I realized that I had this part right here going just like way too low, like it was covering up too much of the ruffle trim area here. And I mean, it was probably following like this line and then going up. And then the other part was actually, I think I had this pleated about one pleat too many. So I undid one pleat. So this is now about 1 inch lower, closer down to this ruffle. But up here, I folded it in like a ton, like so much more. I mean, just to look behind, because I haven't done anything yet, the original fold line was here, and I've now moved that like 2 inches up over here. So I will have to refold, replete everything, cut off a lot of that excess, because really, Dora? This isn't about you. Anyway, I will have to refold and replete that excess to get that out of the way, because there's too much right now to keep it in there. Like, this is like 4 inches deep. I know you're here too. Lion, you guys, this is not your video. This is, Dora, this is not your video. I'm trying to, just because I'm sitting on the floor does not mean that I'm here for the two of you. Anyway, so yeah, I have to replete all of this and deal with this thing right here, and then I can hem this by hand. I suppose I don't have to hem it by hand because it will be covered up by the trim. And I bought another pack of this trim. It comes in 6-yard packs, and I realized that if I'm going to do the double layer like it has on the fashion plate, then I need another pack for like the extra 1.5 yards that I need. So I don't know, I feel like that might be really heavy. I might just leave it as one, but the other one is on its way to me. But yeah, if I can get this hemmed, I would love to start putting trim on, but it's also Sunday afternoon right now, so I don't know what's going to happen other than cats using my chair as a scratching post. Really, Dora? So anyway, I am going to get to work and hem all that. I know I'm going all over the place with this, but I am also working on the back drape. And so I took out a little bit more of the wedge that I had taken out before, like where I pinned it. I almost wonder, honestly, if I took it a little too much. I only went about 1.5 inches more. But then I decided to pin some of the trim onto here, and now I feel like this has gotten too small of a space, whereas before I thought it was too large of a space. So yeah, I might take that back out. And then I also did a little panel here. This is one width of the fabric, which I think is gonna work. It's not even attached or anything, but it's one width of the fabric. I did it 32 inches long, and in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd gone a little bit longer because I feel like there's not room to turn up a hem. I think I probably should have gone for like 34. I'm going to do a very small hem on this, but this will be kind of gathered up right here and sewn in behind where these drapes are coming together. And then this will come down and there will be fringe trim on the bottom as well. So I have a lot of things that I think I have now kind of figured out, but that I actually have to do and, you know, hem and attach trim and etc. This area right here is making me think for sure that I do want the 2 tiers of trim like I thought before, because it just feels very sparse, I guess. So yeah, I'm probably gonna stick with 2. I mean, this is just backwards, but it would be like something like that, so it'd be way more dense. The only thing is that then I wind up with 2 of the same color in a row because it is every other and there's no way to get around that. But yeah, I think we're getting there. I've got to take the pleats on this side and do the same thing on the other side, and then I have to like stitch out the wedge section, which I may just leave the fabric in there because it's not a big deal at all. And I have to turn hems on this, the hems on the front, actually stitch in place the hem up here. So a lot of hand sewing to do for sure. I decided to start with the back drape section since it can easily be removed from the dress form. So what I've done here is I've seamed the ends of this together. This is one width of fabric that's by 32 inches, by the way. I've seamed the ends together and then I've centered that seam. And now I'm going to do seams along this end and along this end, probably a 3/8 inch seam allowance on both, and I'll leave a little gap somewhere in there so that I can turn this right sides out, but that will give me one like fully finished piece that's already lined with itself. And then once I turn it right side out and close up that little gap, then it will just be gathered together, and by hand it will be stitched to the join in the dress, and then the trim will be put on the other side. I just finished stitching on all of the tassels to the drape. It's not like actually in place yet because this part of the drape is not done yet. I've just sort of pinned it there, but this is what this bottom drape is going to look like. And I think now that I've added the tassels, it did actually wind up being the perfect length. So doing it this way worked. I'm a little bit worried that it's a little thin. It's just the 2 layers of silk, but hopefully it will be fine. I will find out in next week's video though. Because unfortunately that is all that I have time for this week to work on this project, because I've got to go edit a couple of videos now Sunday night. But I think that I made decent progress this week. I mean, I'm honestly having a hard time remembering everything that I've done now this week as opposed to others, but I'm pretty sure velvet ribbon was this week, right? And decorating the whole collar and putting that on was this week. Sewing on 35 buttons was this week. And then figuring out some of these drapey skirt bottom bits. I think that was all this week, right? So, oh, and the buttonholes, of course, to go with the buttons. So yeah, I mean, that's a good chunk. I was honestly hoping to get a lot farther this week just because I start rehearsals for ragtime tomorrow. So I don't know what all's gonna get accomplished next week, and the Victorian Festival is very near at this point, and I still wanna make a ball gown bodice besides this, like not with this project, but whole other project. So I'm running out of time. I really got to get into it, and I really got to finish this next week. But I think we're in a good place. Probably between now and the next video, I'm going to go ahead and do a lot of that hand sewing stuff. So like doing the hems on the bottom of the bodice back and also the bottom of the bodice fronts. I don't know that I'll do much with the drape. I think we'll probably save the drape for next week and see how that goes, because I think that's going to be a lot of puzzling out and figuring out more than even what I've already done. But again, good base. I'm feeling okay-ish about where we are. I need to finish this in time. So hopefully you enjoyed this week's video. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Julie, and Mirage. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!